Ladies and gentlemen, the American jury and Bulldog Nation, this is going to be the first of a series that I'm going to do about legal issues to educate you, to help you deal when these situations arise. Today is going to be an automobile accident. And when I say automobile accident, I'm talking about any accident that involves a vehicle. It could be a semi-tractor trailer, it could be a motorcycle, it could be a truck, it could be a bicycle. Any of these type of accidents, what I'm about ready to tell you is going to apply for the most part. What I'm going to also tell you is going to apply whether it's Kentucky or Ohio or any state, really. There are nuances and there's differences, and that's why you need an attorney. But what I'm about ready to tell you will explain the process and explain everything, what I believe, very thoroughly yet succinctly. First, you have the accident itself. If you're ever in an accident, chances are a police officer is going to show up. And that police officer is going to interview everybody that he can at the scene, and he's going to fill out a police report, and that police report is the beginning of the saga. I want to stress this. Usually, most accidents are clear who's at fault. That accident report is going to have very clearly who's at fault, who ran a red light. Sometimes it's not very clear, but that's the starting point, is the police report. Liability and fault. That's the most important thing in any type of these accidents. Who's at fault? Because who's at fault establishes where everything goes from there. You have to prove somebody's at fault. And you have to prove that by tipping the scales of justice. You don't have to prove it under a standard called clear and convincing, but you have to, or beyond all reasonable doubt, but you have to prove it beyond the preponderance of the evidence. That's the law that you're dealing with, Kentucky or Ohio. The other thing is witnesses. Those are very important. It might be the passenger in your car. It might be a pedestrian that was sitting at the interchange. It might be the car behind you. But the police officer is going to interview all the witnesses that saw the accident. But sometimes there's witnesses that weren't discovered that day that might know something. If you're injured in an automobile accident, I hope that the fault is clear and you don't have a who said, she said type of a situation. But sometimes that arises. When that does arise, sometimes you need an investigator. There's all types of investigators. Some do it all. You might have an investigator that's simply going to go out and look at the scene, take photographs of the property damage of the vehicle. Sometimes law firms have their own investigators. Deters Law has their own investigators. They interview witnesses. Then there's something called an accident reconstructionist. An accident reconstructionist is a special investigator who's trained to say who locked it up, who swerved, who caused the accident. And those, of course, can be very important in many accidents. The most important thing after you have fault is you have to prove causation. There's also a term called proximate causation, which means immediate causation. Ladies and gentlemen, the American jury and Bulldog Nation, this is an issue which most people do not understand. They don't understand it because they think, accident, I'm hurt, where's my money? For example, if you have a hurt knee and you're in an accident, well, I guarantee you the insurance company is going to say, well, was your knee already hurt or was it hurt from the accident? So causation and proximate causation is very important. The next thing you have to prove is damages. Just because somebody ran a red light, smashed in your car, and you got hurt, the issue is, what's your damages? The following are the generic damages that arise in these accidents. Your medical bills. You have to prove what medical bills were directly related to the accident. the trip to the emergency room, the trip to the orthopedic, the trip to the cosmetic surgeon, all of those. What was caused? What are those medical bills that are reasonable and necessary as a result of the accident? The next is pain and suffering. Guess what, folks? Pain and suffering is just simple common sense. Let me give you an example. If you have a broken back in a car accident, it's pretty easy to assume you're in a lot of pain. When you have what's called whiplash cases where there's no broken bones, that's very subjective. Usually you can make the connection between the pain from the injury, but sometimes it's not. Your mental and physical pain and suffering damages, an insurance company adjuster or a jury will determine that based primarily on what your injuries are and what you testify to. Did you need and require pain medicine? The other factor is lost income. If you were working and you didn't work for a whole month after the accident because you had a broken leg, whatever you made is part of your damages. One of the things that comes up a lot of times is people are old or they're already retired. You can't claim lost income if you have no lost income. Another issue that comes up a lot is whether or not you are permanently injured and can't work anymore. Insurance companies will challenge that. But if you're injured in an accident and you become a paraplegic, you can prove that, hey, I can't do any more work. You know what they'll say, though? Well, can you do something? Can you sit in your wheelchair and make phone calls? Trust me, they'll do that to you. Also, property damage. The property damage in your vehicle. Now, a lot of automobile accidents, liability is clear, somebody's harmed, the property damage is clear, but that's the only issue. I can tell you this, that a lawyer can't help you a whole lot when you're dealing with property damage simply because it's not a lot. If you got a $2,000 worth of property damage, by the time you pay a lawyer, you won't get anything. Now, in Ohio, they have these claims that are called lost value of your vehicle as a result of the property damage. So you do have that, but it's very difficult. Usually property damage is easy. But I want to stress this to you. Your car is totaled. You know what? The insurance company is going to look at the Blue Book value, the Kelly Book value. They're not going to want to pay you for all the new paint job that you just had. So sometimes you're going to have those battles. Immediately following the accident, the quote-unquote whiplash cases, chances are a lawyer's going to send you to a chiropractor if you haven't already. Be leery of chiropractors. I've gone to chiropractors. We refer people to chiropractors. I got chiropractors who are friends of mine. But what chiropractors often do will treat you up until a certain amount of time to get what's called the no-fault or PIP benefits and then miraculously say that you're cured. I want to stress this. Just because you run up a bunch of medical bills with a chiropractor doesn't make your case necessarily worth more money. Another question that comes up a lot is, should you go to the ER? My experience tells me that if the accident is severe enough to where you went to the emergency room by ambulance from the scene, insurance companies generally like that. However, a lot of times the aches and pains don't arrive until the next day. So going to the emergency room the next day is okay. But you know what? If you've got a broken bone, you don't go to the ER and you can prove the broken bone is from the accident, it doesn't matter that you went to the ER. Physical therapy. I'm somebody that personally has never gone to physical therapy. Why? Because I think you can do physical therapy on your own, even when I had my arm surgery. But there's a lot of injuries that require physical therapy. And going to physical therapy is important. One of the things an insurance company will do is to see whether or not you comply with it. So, for example, if you're ordered to do 10 physical therapy visits, you go to one, the insurance company is going to say, you weren't hurt that bad. Those are the games that they play. Passengers. Here's a tip that everybody forgets about. Let's say you're a passenger in a vehicle. If you're a passenger in a vehicle, this is something that nobody realizes. If you're injured as a passenger in a car from another car hitting you, that's a claim. But let's say the driver of the car you're in runs off the road and hits a tree. If he's negligent as a passenger, you have a claim against the driver of the car's insurance company. By the way, that includes even if you're the wife. Let's say the driver's the husband and you're the wife or you're the child. You've got a claim. People forget about that all the time. It's lost money if you're injured. Consortium. If you're a spouse and you're injured, your spouse is injured so bad that it affects love, affection, care, you have a claim. Same for a minor child. So you need to always ask an attorney about what's called a consortium claim. It's kind of a collateral claim. The other issue that I want to talk about is insurance, beginning with liability insurance. Liability insurance is the insurance that is on the vehicle that's at fault. Whichever vehicle that is. Remember, the law requires you to have liability insurance. There's limits in Kentucky, limits in Ohio. $25,000 you have to have. So chances are there's $25,000. Here's a little tricky tip that I found out over the years. You know who has more insurance? Newer cars. One of the first questions I used to always ask is, how old was the car that hit you? Because if it's a newer car, they always have more insurance. If you get hit by a 1988 Chevette, chances are there's not much insurance. But liability insurance is for insurance for the at-fault party. Then there's something called no-fault or personal injury protection. That's insurance on the car that you're injured, regardless of who's at fault, that pays up to, like in Kentucky, up to $10,000 in benefits for medical bills, lost income. And the idea is, behind that, is to get you some medical help and some relief while we sort out who's at fault. The other insurance that's very important to carry is called uninsured motorist. What that is insurance if you're injured in an accident and the car that caused the accident, the other guy, doesn't have any insurance. If you have what's called uninsured motorist on your car, that'll take care of you. The other insurance that nobody ever thinks about or talks about, which is really important, is what's called underinsurance. What that means is a fancy word for not enough insurance. So let's say the vehicle and the other vehicle only has that hits you, that causes the accident, only has $25,000 in insurance. Well, if you have what's called underinsurance on your car, let's say $100,000, you can get the $25,000 of the car that caused the accident plus the $100,000 if your injury is worth it. Here's another myth. Just because the other guy or you have a certain amount of insurance doesn't mean you're entitled to it. You have to prove your claim is worth it. So what will happen is say, well, the other guy has $50,000 of insurance. I want the money. Well, if you got a whiplash case, you're not going to get $50,000. You're going to get $10,000. One of the things on these insurance companies that I want to talk about in general, insurance companies, is in all my years being connected to the law business, I've never seen an insurance company one single time write a check that they didn't have to. If your insurance lapsed, they're not going to cover it. If you canceled, they're not going to cover it. If there's any way an insurance company can get out of paying you or writing a check, they will. They will fight you. So just be prepared for the mindset. Sometimes it's not easy. Sometimes you have to file a lawsuit. And that lawsuit is usually filed in the county where the accident happened. And you usually got to have a lawyer to file that lawsuit. After the lawsuit is filed, there's a process called discovery. You'll have to answer a lot of written questions that the insurance company is going to send to you about your background, your education, your work history, your injuries, your medical bills, where you treated. They also will probably take your deposition. All a deposition is a sworn statement. You and your lawyer are in a room, and their lawyer's asking you questions, and a court reporter takes it all down. That's usually all that's done when the accident is clearly somebody's at fault. Sometimes they might want to take the deposition of a family member or somebody else. When you're injured in an automobile accident, Sometimes you have to go to trial because the accident is disputed. Just to let you know, if you're going to go to trial, by the way, 95% of these cases are settled without a trial. But if you go to trial, you can expect a trial not to happen for a couple years. That's usually. With the coronavirus backup, who knows? A trial, you get to present your case. You've seen enough courtroom TV. I don't have to tell you what a trial's all about. Now, when you're first injured in an automobile accident and you contact an attorney, the first thing the attorney is going to have you sign is a contract. And it's kind of pretty standard that if you hire an attorney for a car accident case, it's generally a third. A lot of lawyers play these games that if you file a lawsuit, it's 40%. If you go to trial, it's 50%. But most car accidents, 1/3 contingency fee is what it is. Hopefully you have a lawyer that will advance the costs, and then you reimburse them out when you get your money. But not all law firms do that. You're also going to sign what's called a medical release. That allows the lawyer to get all of your medical records from everybody that you visited and check them out. Once they get the medical records, a good lawyer will have a nurse or a healthcare professional maybe take a look at that to help put together the case. Same with wage records. You're going to sign a form so they can get your employment records, your wages, get proof, your tax returns of what you lost if you have a lost income claim. A lawyer will take your medical records, your medical bills, your wage information, and put together what's called a demand letter. Once that demand letter is sent to the insurance company, sometimes you'll negotiate a settlement. Sometimes you'll have mediation as well. Another issue, and I'll throw it in right here because I'll put it in with demand, is the statute of limitations. You know what? Generally, you have 2 years to bring a car accident case, but there's all kinds of exceptions of 1 year, like consortium claims. I can tell you this, you don't want to wait around to get a lawyer. And you generally want to make that demand, and if you don't get your case settled, you want to file the lawsuit right away. The sooner, the better. Now, there's an issue of experts. Sometimes you need experts, sometimes you don't. Your medical experts are usually just the doctors that took care of you. You don't need to go out and hire anybody special. But if those doctors have to give depositions or testify, they will charge money. But you might need an expert for the accident. We talked about that briefly, accident reconstructionist, a medical expert. It might be that you want to find a different medical expert to say how much your pain was. You also might want to have an income expert. There's vocational experts, and sometimes there's an economist that you have to employ to help show you, especially if you're permanently injured. And let's say you're making $30,000. You want to extrapolate out all the way to retirement age of 66, how much money? And then it gets reduced to what's called present value. It gets really complicated. Another issue that could come up in a car accident case is product liability. What I'm talking about there is, was the airbag not working? By the way, you have to prove it caused a problem because auto manufacturers are like insurance companies. They will fight you. Was a brake defective? Was a tire defective? Sometimes if you're injured really, really bad, you have to look for big pots of money, and that's where you look. Finally, you have to look at other people that might be responsible. The biggest example for me to use is a bar. Bar and third parties. You got all kinds of situations where you go to a bar or somebody goes to the bar and they drink. Here's a case that I had once. You can't make this up. It was a really sad case. My client was on a motorcycle and a young girl that was intoxicated pulled in front of him, and he had permanent brain injury for the rest of his life. Through some good investigating, some hard work, we actually found out, we actually made a deal. It was my idea. We made a deal with the car accident. The young girl that caused the accident was in jail. I went to see her in the jail, and I talked to the family. Do you want money or do you want wrath? Because we made the deal with the young girl, and I said, you tell me everywhere you went that night, they're not going to press for harsh criminal charges. Because I did that, pretty creative, you know what we found out? This underage girl drank at a restaurant. She drank at a house underage. She drank at a bar underage. And she bought alcohol at a convenience store underage. 4 different places, all alcohol related. We were able to get a settlement with each and every one of them. Sometimes you have to do that, especially in these serious injuries. By the way, there's something called the Dram Shop Act, which protects the bar owners except if they knew they were drunk. Obviously, an underage drinker is a totally different ballgame. So, ladies and gentlemen, the American jury and Bulldog Nation, without using a teleprompter, I've just laid out for you what you need to do and what the process is in a car accident, truck accident. If you're ever in one, I hope you're not. But that lays it out. Every case might have a little nuances, but you know what? I think I've done a pretty good job of covering it for you. Finally, if you are ever injured in an accident and you need an attorney, I know from firsthand experience, nobody does it better than Deters Law. This is the Bulldog. Every dog has their day. Have a great day.